And let's start by talking about hybrid work. Now, typically when we talk about hybrid and cloud, we're discussing environments that are partially on-premise and partially in a public cloud provider, something like Azure, for instance. But when we talk about hybrid work, we're going to mean something a little bit different. Spotify calls hybrid work a workplace that isn't built on the premise that employees need to gather in an office with traditional desk setups. That is, it's a flexible policy that allows people to choose where and when they want to work, balancing potentially between home, the office, maybe a coffee shop. It's the ability for employees to work essentially from wherever they need to work. In the pandemic, the entire COVID-19 mess that's been affecting us for a couple years now, has given this flexible work movement a very, very large boost. We were at times forced to work from home, and then we started slowly coming back to the office, and many of us now have this sort of hybrid mix where some employees are working from home, some employees are visiting the office, and some employees have a mix. Now, this way of working, and as it continues developing and evolving, it highlights not just the benefits of this arrangement, but maybe the shifts that we need to make within our organizations in order to strike the right balance between what my staff prefers or the way my staff prefers to work and what my business actually needs in order to keep on operating and thriving. Of course, this is all combined as well with the security of my data, my identities, my organization, but also the safety, the health and safety of my employees as we navigate this, the ups and downs of the COVID-19 pandemic. So if we understand why or what hybrid work is, what benefits does it bring to organizations and employees? Well, we can start by talking about the employee. And I should say at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will try to address them as we move forward. Otherwise, we can address them at the end as well. Now, for employees, there are several key benefits to hybrid work, and the first one is increased job satisfaction. Microsoft, along with IDC, performs a yearly survey that they call the Work Trend Index. In this case, we'll be looking at the 2021 Work Trend Index, which surveyed around 30,000 people in 31 countries in 2020, and also combined those insights with insights from Microsoft 365, anonymized insights, and found that over 70% of workers want flexible remote work options to continue. Now, curiously, around 65% of those same workers also want more in-person time with their teams. So it's not really about fully work from home or fully in office. It's about this mix of hybrid work. And that's really what our employees are looking for. The ability to be able to have head down alone time, perhaps at home, to really focus on work, but also the ability to come together with coworkers when needed for collaboration, brainstorming sessions, or whatever it may be. So hybrid work allows that for our employees, and it leads to increased job satisfaction. One of the reasons for that increased job satisfaction is the improved work-life balance. And the truth of the matter is that for many, many roles, we don't necessarily need a traditional 9-to-5 workday. If my job is to sell cars and I sell 10 cars in 1 hour and then I go off to do something else the rest of my day, but with those 10 cars that I sold in that single hour, I already covered my monthly quota, well, for me as an employer, that should be fine. My employee is meeting and exceeding their quotas. And so flexibility, or rather this hybrid work flexibility, allows employees, especially employees who now have to deal with the added complexities of the COVID-19 pandemic. Think parents who suddenly have to help their students, their children, be able to connect to school if they're still not going to school physically, if they're still attending remote school, or parents that may have to pick up their child from school because maybe a student suddenly tested positive and classes were canceled halfway through the day. These things that come up during the day can be better served and better met by the flexibility that a hybrid work schedule provides. Of course, we also have the safety aspect. As less employees are in the office, less employees congregate together, there's reduced exposure to illness. And curiously enough, surveys and studies have also found that there is improved productivity in my employees. Who would have guessed? happy employees produce more. In fact, around 69% of employees have been found to have the same or improved amounts of productivity, according to a survey conducted by Envoy with Wakefield Research. Now, these benefits aren't necessarily only for the employee. There's also benefits for the employer. On one hand, if I have less people in the office, I'm going to have reduced real estate costs. In fact, a study performed by McKinsey found that there are many firms that could reduce, they studied around 2,000 firms, and they found that on average, they could reduce their real estate costs by about 30%. Now, real estate being one of the largest expenses for companies, that is a significant number. So in a hybrid work setup where I have maybe hotel desks that companies or coworkers can, oh, I apologize. I've misplaced the word in English. Hotel desks that our employees can reserve is the word I'm looking for, and not necessarily assigned desks per employee. Then I can have less desks. I can have less real estate. I can have less office space. At Inova, at the Inova Puerto Rico office, this resulted, for instance, in us not having to move to a larger office as we added additional employees and a significant savings in expenses. An additional benefit for employers is that you can now benefit from a larger talent pool and improved retention of talent. On one hand, if I don't need employees to come physically into the office, then that means I don't necessarily need to hire employees from my physical island, from my physical location. I can now start to look at people from additional regions, and this may open my talent pool to specialized skills or people that could work on different time zones. And if, for instance, I'm someone that is looking to provide 24/7 support, having people in different time zones is a very, very powerful tool for me to be able to provide that 24/7 round-the-clock service. It, of course, also leads to improved retention. As we saw, hybrid work leads to improved employee satisfaction, and a happy employee is an employee that stays, while a frustrated one does not. Envoy's survey showed that almost half of employees, 47% of the employees they surveyed, would likely look for another job if their employer doesn't adopt the flexible working model within the next year. That would be 2021, 2022. The hybrid work shift is also an opportunity for businesses to streamline business processes because, as Spotify highlights, a distributed first structure challenges companies to streamline communications and collaboration practices. And we can think of legacy processes that may still run in pen and paper, things like requesting approval for overtime or requesting leave. That maybe still run on a physical pen or paper that I have to go and hand in to my HR person, or in a PDF that I fill in and email to my HR person, which is really only a small step above the physical pen and paper. And the hybrid work model is an opportunity to look at these processes and look at ways to automate, streamline, and digitize them. So as I adopt hybrid work, it can make my company a more effective and efficient company. And of course, we have to highlight improved productivity again. This is not just a benefit for employees, it's also a benefit for employers. If my employees are producing more, well, that's going to make me a more successful company. Now, it all sounds very nice, but can we actually apply this in the real world? Are there actual people already putting this into effect? Well, yes, and we'd like to look at 3 examples. The first one is Spotify. And these slides, I believe, will be shared out. And there's actually a link in each of these to a small article where we can see the quote in context. So Spotify in February 12, 2021, started shifting their employees to a hybrid first strategy. And we really like to highlight this piece of the article where they mentioned that work isn't something that people come to the office for. It's something that they do. And effectiveness can't be measured simply by the number of hours people spend in an office. We have to find more efficient KPIs, more realistic KPIs than simply the number of hours work. Because frankly, I can be a very bad employee and I can pretend to work for 12 hours a day when I'm really just sitting on Reddit looking at memes. But alternatively, I can be a very good employee who's able to meet my tasks in a very short amount of time and maybe uses the rest of his day to go work out or to care for my children or to go shop for groceries. So in order to measure effectiveness in my employees and to understand why hybrid work does, well, not to be redundant, but work, I have to put aside the preconceived notion that work is something I go into a building from 8 to 5 to do. And frankly, there are still roles that will require physical presence. If I'm a custodian, I can't maintain a building if I'm not physically at the building. But many roles can be performed remotely. What's more, we allow our employees the flexibility to work at the time that they are more productive. Not everybody is at their best productivity in the morning. I'm sure we all know people who are zombies in the morning until they have their first three cups of coffee. We may also know people who alternatively are very tired after lunch, and so they're sluggish after lunch, but in the morning they do their best work. This hybrid work model and the flexibility that it provides allows employees to do the work when they can do it best. Salesforce is another company that agrees with that. In fact, their chief people officer, their essentially chief of HR, declared the 9 to 5 workday dead back in February 2021 when they too adopted a hybrid work model. Now, Salesforce is slowly reopening their offices and returning to physical presence, but they're still keeping many of their hybrid work policies because what they found is that productivity did not go down. In fact, if we read through the article and the follow-up article where they talk about returning to the office, Salesforce has had growth throughout the pandemic. Microsoft is a third example of a company that has also adopted a hybrid first strategy. And they've also found that hybrid work is really the new normal. And as employers, we have to understand and adapt to this new normal. In Microsoft, they've already seen throughout, they began with a hybrid work move fairly early in the pandemic in 2020. And they've already seen, as we can see here in the quote from their executive vice president, that they've already proven that there are more ways of working than simply sitting in an office building from 8 to 5. And Microsoft, like Salesforce, has shown continuous growth throughout the pandemic by adopting this hybrid work model. So hybrid work does work in the real world.